Hello and welcome to the webinar today on transforming business outcomes with Copilot Studio. So I'm Jack. I'm going to be talking you through this. This will take around half an hour. We've got just over half a dozen slides, and then we'll move into a few demos to demonstrate how you can utilize Copilot Studio within Microsoft 365. So let's jump straight in. So first things first is let's recap on what is Copilot. So a Copilot is a AI-powered conversational interface based on large language models that has been embedded into Microsoft technology. This exists in a lot of your first-party Microsoft applications that you will use on a day-to-day basis, and there are approximately 150 different Copilots that exist. Some of the most common ones are embedded into tools like Outlook, into tools such as Microsoft Teams, into Excel, into PowerPoint, and they can do really powerful tasks. And it's a really good way of enabling organizations to solve their business challenges by improving operational efficiency, increasing productivity, and providing really good and strong customer and colleague experiences. So, why has conversational AI been a key in helping organizations transform? So there are a couple of factors when we think about Microsoft Copilot. So one of them is the number of communication channels that exist. So I'm sure that everyone on this call will be aware that there are lots of different ways that people provide and present information, whether that be in an Outlook email, whether it be in Microsoft Teams, whether it be via a phone call, whether it be via a document. All of these different technologies provide different ways that certain people communicate. What Copilots can do is ultimately look at all of that information and present it back to you in a summarized way. This means that what we can do is surface content back to our users to improve that efficiency. However, things like Microsoft Copilot have their limitations, and what we want to do sometimes is extend what we can do within the out-of-the-box technology. So that is where Copilot Studio comes in. And Copilot Studio is a tool that provides an organization with the ability to extend first-party copilots or create custom copilots. So let's just dive into a little bit of what that means. So extending a first-party copilot is the ability to extend the copilots that you may already have within your Microsoft 365 environment. So if you have Microsoft 360 Copilot for Microsoft 365, you can actually extend that Copilot and embed different data sources. You can improve the functionality of that Copilot based on your business needs. So one example may be to integrate into something such as Salesforce or ServiceNow, and that would then provide users with the ability to query content utilizing the Copilot functionality based on those data sources. And the other option that you have within Copilot Studio is being able to create custom copilots that can do more bespoke activities based on a variety of different data sources. So that may be connecting to, again, your services such as Salesforce or ServiceNow, or even other services such as, common databases like data lakes, Cosmos DB, or Azure SQL Server, are different sources that we can create interfaces into, which then enables Copilot and the LLMs to query and interrogate that data source to provide conversational AI over the top. So being able to really integrate with that information and move forward. So one of the questions that we always get asked is Copilot just a chatbot? Well, Copilot Studio has evolved from Power Virtual Agents. So in Microsoft Ignite, in the last Microsoft Ignite, Microsoft announced that they were moving from Power Virtual Agents and there was a rebrand to Copilot Studio. What this did is it moved all of the functionality that you had within a chatbot under natural language understanding. So NLU means natural language understanding, and that's where we could, do common text-based scenarios. We could query data with APIs and ground that in real conversation. We can look at using pre-built content and topics by makers, so people can go and create different content loops and being able to integrate that into the chatbot. We can embed that into different sites, and we can hold context between different subjects within a conversation. Once Copilot was embedded within Once Copilot Studio was released, that is when generative AI features were also released. So that enabled us to do a lot more in terms of the intelligence, and it enabled AI to assist the people creating copilots by streamlining that workflow. So the first is understanding natural language and using things like generative answers. Being able to ground in multiple data sources. So whether you've got internal data sources or external, the Copilot can be aware of the different topics because those data sources still may relate to one another. The ability to generate content and capabilities through the power of Copilot and response generation. So that ability to understand what you are asking as a user through the LLM language models is much more powerful than what you would have been able to achieve with a chatbot. A chatbot is a lot more linear. A generative AI solution is more dynamic. If people have seen things like ChatGPT, you'll understand that you can really start to get specific with the prompts that you pass it, and Copilot Studio can leverage that functionality and the different models that exist. We can have contextual interactions, so we can connect it to different experience inlays. So what that means is, where do we want to surface this conversational experience? What language do we want to experience that in? So if we've got multiple language requirements, if we're looking at different geographical zones, we can really start to push different languages with these experiences. And Copilot has the ability to understand different languages and interact with that data. It can do things like translation and really start to push the boundaries there. But the other thing as well is that we can embed custom Copilots and Copilot Studio applications into a wide variety of different services. So whether you wanted to embed it into a Microsoft team, onto your website, it doesn't really matter. We are able to do that. And finally, that ability to be responsive and adaptable. So what we don't want, unlike a chatbot, chatbots were quite static in comparison to copilots. We want to be able to be dynamic and utilize the technology to be able to publish and get the results that we want based on the conversations that we're having. So to take a step back from this, one thing that we can look at is, how does a chatbot work? So ultimately, a chatbot is very much all around understanding conversation. So everyone here, this is a conversation that may occur. So it's a text message, Sam, what's up? We send the text message to Sam and that conversation is finished. When we think about integrating that type of conversation into a chat-based interface, it isn't actually that simple, because what happens is we go through, we ask the question, and then we start to have lots of different branches that can cause challenges to ultimately getting to the success. So if we think about asking a service, in this case, a Copilot chatbot, text Sam, what's up? First of all, does Copilot know who Sam is? Okay, if it knows who Sam is, do we have multiple people that are referred to as Sam? Have we got to be more specific? Do we have to be even more specific once we provide more information, such as a surname? So Sam Butler. Oh, okay, well, which which Sam Butler is it. So if you're looking at integrating into a CRM system that contains all of your customer information, there's a chance that you might have multiple people with the same name. What happens if Sam has multiple contact numbers? Which contact number is best to use? Is it a mobile number? What happens if they have multiple mobile numbers? And then also what happens if there is no phone number available? So these are all scenarios that require thought when creating these chat experiences. And when we created Power Virtual Agents, you had to think about a lot of this content because generative AI was not available. However, with the ability of now utilizing generative AI within our solutions, what we can do is we can use generative answers. And that is the ability to dynamically generate multi-turn answers based off your content in real time. So utilizing the large language models to be able to understand the conversation based on your data and apply the scenarios to that accordingly. We can use generative actions, so we can create dialogue and take action through dynamically chaining different actions. So what that means is you may have two different subjects that your Copilot is answering, and a generative action can link those two subjects together dynamically by understanding what the actions are trying to do. So if we were to take a Copilot that was to interact with a service management tool, you may go in, open a new ticket for a new account for a new team member, and then you may ask it for, have you got any existing tickets that are open? Well, what Copilot can do using generative AI is chain those two together so that when you're in the flow of one action, it can then move you to the other. And then when we're looking at building out Copilots, generative building can help us and assist us in doing that for us, so it can actually push and support us in creating these experiences from the very start so that we don't have to do as much work ourselves. So really powerful in terms of being able to utilize generative AI rather than having to go through and think about all of the individual elements of a conversation that may exist. So what is the landscape of Copilot? Moving my slides. So Microsoft Copilot Studio is not just a chatbot. There are many different ways that you can utilize Microsoft Copilot Studio to create copilots. As we've discussed, one of the first things is around being able to extend the Microsoft copilots. So these may be copilots from Microsoft 365. So within the services that we utilize on a regular basis, such as Microsoft Outlook, it might be Microsoft Teams, and being able to really push and surface that within. We also can then utilize some of the other first-party copilots, such as Dynamics 365 Sales Copilot, so being able to maybe bring in, if there's multiple CRM systems, being able to consume more than one CRM source, so all of our customers' data there. And then we have, when we start to think about it, is we start moving into the custom enterprise copilots route. And that is where there are lots of different ways that you may build up a custom copilot. So we have the bot framework that enables us to create bots and use professional development to enhance our experiences. We have a bot service channel to embed it within Microsoft Azure and the different services that we may wish to interact with. We have Azure AI Studio utilizing Microsoft Azure and the power of the cloud. That enables us to interact with more complex solutions and different data sources that aren't available through the Copilot Studio interface at the moment. Then we have the ability to leverage Azure Cognitive Services. So if we're looking at doing things like invoice recognition, so scanning of documentation, if we're looking at doing translation of text, or various other things such as image recognition, so recognizing objects and images, for example. We can start to leverage Azure Cognitive Services to do those type of actions. And then we've got things like Power Platform connectors, so connecting to the data that is surfaced through different Power Platform connectors. So there are over 1,000 connectors now that exist within the Power Platform, and being able to leverage those to create these studio experiences for our users. And then finally, AI Builder, so to utilize the Power Platform AI Builder models within our copilots so that we can do, again, things like translation, invoice scanning, and so on and so forth. So what Copilot is best? So Copilot Studio is for ultimately when we've got things like knowledge discovery. So we're looking at vast amounts of web data. We have internal data that maybe isn't accessible through the copilots that you get within Microsoft, from Microsoft, the first party copilots. So maybe it's data that sits within an on-premises environment, maybe it sits in a third-party service outside of Microsoft. That's when we can start to create these copilots to ultimately chat over the data. Also, if we've got local documents that we need to upload, or we want to do things like semantic indexing and get the feel for the type of content we are querying in. We have task completion, so being able to do things like digital process automation, so being able to support in completing activities. We can create plugins that can do more specific tasks, and you can get the Copilot to actually progress something. So that could be to create a record in a ticketing system. It could be to automate a document approval. It could be a variety of different things that we could look at helping automate our day-to-day business processes. And then we've got the ability again to customize the copilots through role-based copilots, so things like sales and service. So if we're utilizing Dynamics 365 or other service management tools, being able to create those role-based so they're specific in what questions you're asking. And then we've got more generic ones for Copilot for Microsoft 365. Then we've got the first-party copilots that exist, so things like GitHub and Fabric, so being able to automate code creation so that it can be predictive and understand what you are trying to do. So if you're doing a piece of code that is ultimately adding two numbers together, Copilot would be able to suggest a way of completing that piece of functionality. And things like content creation as well, so that ability to create content using Bing Enterprise. So if you're wanting to create images, if you're wanting to create scripts for a video, Bing Enterprise and Copilot within that can support in doing that as well. So now I've got a demo to show, jumping into a few examples of how you may wish to use Copilot. What I'll do first is show how Copilot works, and I'll jump into a very quick technical overview and how you could actually configure one for yourself. So just change over my screens. So we're going to start off with a SharePoint document library that has several job specifications within it. What we wanted to do was create an experience, so a chatbot experience that enables users to ask questions on all the different job specifications for the organization, so they can streamline the process of creating new specifications, or they can ask questions of existing specifications that exist. So what I'll do is I'll show this working, and then I'll show how simple this is to actually create, and we'll go through that live. So what we have here is Copilot Studio. So when we open it up, we have a list of all the Copilot Studio solutions that we've created. If we open up our job specifications Copilot, what we are going to do is ask it a question as, what is a job specification for an electric engineer? You can see there that I've got a spelling mistake. Because we're utilizing the LLMs, that will rectify the spelling mistake, and within a moment or two, we will get an answer, and it will provide references as to where it has located that content. So this is actually querying the documents. It provides reference directly to that document too. And then we have another question there. So what is the salary for a market researcher? In the document library, we actually have two different specifications for a market researcher. So I believe that what the Copilot will now go and do is actually provide the two different salaries based on the different ranges that are available. So we've got for a junior marketeer, it's that price, and then between a senior market researcher, we've got that price. And again, we've got the references within that. So the one thing with this experience is that this is a chatbot that the content may be picked up within Microsoft 365 Copilot, but this provides you the ability to create a specific experience for a specific business challenge or a specific business problem. In terms of how we go and create this, it is really simple when we're interrogating SharePoint document sources. So the first thing we'll do is go and take the document library, so job specifications URL. We'll jump back into create. We'll say we're going to create a new Copilot, and we'll call this Copilot for job specs. What we want to do is give instructions to the Copilot. This is one really important piece where you want to provide as much information as to what is the purpose of the Copilot and how should it act. So do you want it to be professional? Do you want it to be chatty? Those are the sort of things that you want it to put in at this point. We again put in a description. So we'll put in some instructions, provide information on the job specifications. And then what we want to do is add in a knowledge, and we're going to select SharePoint and OneDrive, and then we drop in a link that we've just copied, add that, and click create. And in the simplest form, that Copilot has now been created. It takes a little bit of time for the Copilot to go and identify that data source and index the content and then apply the LMs over the top. But within around an hour or so, we can then start to interact with that data and receive updates. So if we were to ask the same question again, what are the salary, we'll see if that's indexed it or whether it not needs a few moments to go and do that in the background. So there you go. So because we've already queried that data source, it's been saved and we're getting the same answers. So a really simple example there on how we can use a custom Copilot for a specific business challenge. So another type of example is, again for a specific example, is for a service solution. So what we have here is a service desk helper Copilot that is embedded into Microsoft Teams. And what this will do is it will automate part of the business process. So we can go in and we can start the engagement with, I have a problem. And this is, I'll talk over how this is created in a moment. And what we have is a bunch of validation that goes through. So we go email address, a staff number, and then it will ask, what do you want to do? And in this instance, we'll select password reset. And what this is actually going to do is it is going to create a brand new ticket for the service desk team, for the managed services team, the IT support team, to actually go and action this. So we've got a new ticket created with the ID of number 71. And it's just a different way, again, a specific example on how you can utilize the Copilot ability to interact with different data sources. You could extend this further, whereby you may wish to say, what tickets do I have open? And that's where things like dynamic chaining can come in, so it can go between different topics and so on and so forth. So this Copilot here was created utilizing Power Automate and Power Platform connectors. And the way that works is we open up a interface, we look at the topics called IT requests, and what you'll see here is question, and we go through this linear process whereby it will ask questions. And when we go and create these, what we can actually do is interact with it in a test mode, and this will start to go through and it will work out where you are in terms of checking and tracking that Copilot and where we are in terms of this process flow. So those are two examples, and that leaves with us 5 minutes for questions and answers. So please feel free to reach out on anything you have. There is an AI assessment course on the back of this. If you're looking at utilising AI but aren't sure where to start, then please feel free to scan that, and that will go to a Microsoft form that you can populate, and we can schedule a call in for the future. You can add a date in. But any questions, please feel free to add in the chat now. If not, that will draw everything to a close. And thank you very much for attending this morning. Okay, well, thank you all for attending. I'm going to close the call now, and I'll hopefully speak to some of you in that AI assessment call.